Woke is borrowed into mainstream use from Black slang. Goes back to, I believe, the 60s as a way of talking about being socially aware, socially conscious. I think it's a really great word. I also think there's something to be said about, like old white dudes on Twitter using woke, because this is an appropriation from Black culture. And so you need to think a little bit more about it. I think, if Wolf Blitzer is saying, stay woke, we have some things to discuss. But in terms of its use is it's a great little use. It's a concise little use.
Woke culture. Let me tell you where this stuff started from. I can't exactly pinpoint the exact dates and times or whatever, but I can tell you my experience of it. It kind of just started out as it was kind of like a more eclectic kind of thing. It was just, woke was kind of like your spiritual awakening or your mental awakening to things that are going on in the world, like, things in the education system, deception in the education system, information out there not being as accurate as it seems, injustices in the world, corporate corruption, political corruption, government corruption, societal influence, celebrity influence, becoming aware of all these things as a whole. And it never necessarily started out as a bad thing. It's just, people wanting to spread the message of what's really going on in the world. The problem with it is that people became woke, as in, they woke up, their eyes were open, but they never learned to become aware. And what I mean by that is that it's one thing when you are able to now see something at the end of the day, but if you're not aware of the how, the what's, the where's and the why's and all of that kind of stuff, then you never really see the full picture. In fact, you're no less ignorant than someone who isn't so much deemed as woke. You're just as susceptible to be used as sheep by other people. And that's essentially what happened. It got picked up by celebrity culture. Because to be honest, this woke thing wasn't even that big of a thing. I remember I was part of that whole woke culture in the early days myself. And let me tell you, trying to convince people back in the days was very, very difficult. Trying to get people on board, no one was really on board it like that. But, celebrity culture started to use it for their own influence. Politics started to use it for its own influence. Corporations started to use it for their own influence. All types of activists and community leaders and stuff like that started to use it for their influence. And, over time, I guess people realized how easily they could manipulate people with it. I mean, you look at society. Society is just completely adapted around woke culture now, whereas, say, just over 10 years ago, or maybe even less than that,
Missouri State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick announcing that the state employees pension fund has pulled all of its equity holdings managed by BlackRock out of BlackRock. The state's treasurer stating, quote, "We should not allow asset managers such as BlackRock, who have demonstrated that they will prioritize advancing a woke political agenda above the financial interests of their customers." James, you've written so much about ESG. I want to get your take on this, because Missouri is standing tall in the face of BlackRock trying to be everybody's environmental policeman. Yeah. And Larry Fink says, I don't want to be the environmental policeman, but that's exactly what he's doing by voting all of those shares toward wokeness, even if shareholders don't want it.
Yeah, and kudos to this Missouri pension fund manager for understanding that the job here is not to signal virtue. The job here is not to get media applause. The job here is to protect pension funds and make sure they grow.
Each week we talk a lot about values and vision. There's a reason for it. I mean, I think we understand it, but too many in public life seem enormously distracted by the mundane, the minutiae, the moment-by-moment matters that nobody's really talking about the long term. And so many of them waste so much time talking about collective, international, woke agenda issues, which frankly divide individuals, you and me, into collective groupings. We're this or we're that, and if we say this, we must be that, that sort of stuff. So simply put, this woke rubbish is weakening our society, and this international woke agenda is undermining the sort of principles that have sustained us for generations in this country and countries like us. And I want our federal government to do better, to stand up against this international woke agenda. And there's some real signs that they are actually doing that. I mean, imagine, if you will, if Anthony Albanese became Prime Minister. Now, I know Albo, we were elected together on the same day, 1996, not a bad bloke, but I reckon he'd roll over and he'd just actually wait for his belly to be scratched by Beijing and Brussels and just follow those woke rules that they are setting for us. I mean, Albo has so many masters within the various Labor Party factions and the left-wing unions, the inner-city latte set that he has in his own constituency, that he's actually forgotten the real master of him must be the people of Australia. And we need our government to give real action on national sovereignty. I think Peter Dutton and Scott Morrison are doing this in different ways, in different agendas, but we need much, much more. We need definitive action on water. We need definitive action on power. Our electricity is just so expensive compared to what it was because of international woke restrictions which are being placed on us to cut emissions. I mean, China's got hundreds of thousands of coal-fired power stations, but if we close our 6 down, somehow we're going to save the planet. Oh, really? And Australia is a just add water country, and the international woke won't let us build dams. State governments won't approve projects anywhere of any great substance, and our agricultural industries desperately need it. They want us to all move out to regional Australia. Terrific. But if you haven't got water, why would you go? And of course, the usual whinges this week about water. How much water does actually make it to the mouth of the Murray? The South Australians have gone off their face, but farmers in Queensland, and particularly in New South Wales, want more reliable water. They've got this great big river, the Darling River, going past it, but if they take out too much, there's a fine. This Murray-Darling agreement does need to be renegotiated. South Australian farmers are worried they're going to have less water, but why not have a discussion about how do we actually get more water into the Murray-Darling Basin? Why not have water harvesting schemes like, well, the Bradfield scheme, that type of scheme, or more like, well, anything. Anything that does put more water into the Murray-Darling's got to be good. Such schemes are actually working in all sorts of other places around the world. I mean, they pipe fresh water from mainland Turkey onto Crete, for heaven's sakes. Why are we doing that here? We could bring water from Tasmania across into the Murray system via the shores, the southern shores around Victoria. But this international woke agenda has made Australia completely prone to a takeover. And national sovereignty is actually vulnerable. We waste so much time on this woke agenda, and I think China actually knows us better than we know ourselves. It's using every trick in the book right now to wreck Australian interests. COVID, it's a bioweapon. It's fractured our society. We've got state against state, borders going up and all sorts of things happening in various places. And I feel for the people of Eastern Sydney, but at least they're still able, other parts of New South Wales, to travel. But government controls on our lives in Australia seem to be modelled on the sort of Chinese response to command and control of the people. China's also controlling our federal and state budgets through mining purchases. They control our manufacturing. They've undercut our costs. And Australian businesses have gone to China to get things made cheaper. And there's been this manipulation of the woke Western economies over climate change, forcing electricity prices up. So China is now controlling extensive water, extensive agricultural production in Australia. They want to destroy our tourism industry and our international standing by using various woke causes. The WTO saying there's something wrong with the Barrier Reef. You name it, it's all happening. We're at war. Not one bullet's been fired, but it's certainly time to make some definite plans to protect Australia's sovereignty.